Wow, loud. Just set a little timer. Hi. Thank you. Hi. Lovely to see you all here. Thank you for coming, especially on this sunny afternoon. My name is Luna. I am originally from Paris, currently based in London, and right now I'm working at Atlantic Records UK as Senior Audience Manager. And I'm here today to talk to you about fandom. A little quick intro about me and my background. So right now at Atlantic, as Senior Audience Manager, my role is to help artists grow and engage their audiences with the ultimate goal of boosting consumption of their music. I work for a record label as opposed to a management company or a publishing business. And before working at Atlantic, I was at Columbia Records, also in London, working on campaigns like Calvin Harris or Adele, working on the album, the 30 album last year the year before was a career highlight for sure. And before that, I spent 4 years at Warner Records, working on established artists and developing artists as well. I worked on Lipa, which was another career highlight of mine. And before that, I was working with independent record labels, Cartel Music Group and Soundway Records, for those who know. First and foremost, I'm a music fan, which I'm sure you guys are as well. And so what I wanted us to start with is for you guys to think about when was a moment where you felt like you were an artist's fan, and what did that feel like for you? So for me, for example, what comes to mind is when I was 15, I contributed to a fan book that was going to be sent to Pete Doherty from the Libertines when he was in prison. And then more recently, just last year, I very nearly booked a Eurostar to go to see Tove Lo's show in Amsterdam because I was missing the London one. So just think about for you, who is an artist or a moment when you felt like you were really a fan of that artist, and what did that look like for you? So now you've got in your mind. So basically in this talk, we'll talk about ways to grow and engage an artist fan base with a focus on superfans. You probably know it's one of the buzzwords of the music industry these days. And we'll go through some tools and examples to help you do that. First, can we switch to the slides, please? Thanks. So we have limited, give me a second. So because we have limited time together today, just want you to remember a little disclaimer that this won't be, there we go. It's a very broad and rich topic. So, this will by no means be comprehensive. And in the examples that I'm going to give you today, it's, stuff that I've worked on or artist campaigns that I've seen and liked. So it won't cover all genres and all experiences, but hopefully you can extract some useful information that could be helpful for you. And really, if you remember only 2 things of this talk today, I'd love these to be, number 1, each artist and their audience is different. There's no cookie cutter approach. You shouldn't do something just because everybody else is doing it or because you feel like you should. Every artist is different and you need to work with that. And the second thing is, my rule of thumb whenever I'm in doubt is really I go back to my experience as a fan. And that's why I asked you to think about that earlier. And so when you're making decisions in your marketing strategy, I would always come back and put yourself in the fan's shoes. What would they want or get from the artist? To start us with, I thought it would be, the focus on fandom and superfans, even though it's a buzzword right now, is nothing but new. Fan clubs have existed since the first part of the 20th century. Then in the 90s, you had street teams. So I just thought it'd be helpful for us to go through the evolution of those teams who help artists connect with their fans. Street teams, worked on a very grassroots local level with very physical, tangible activities like handing out flyers or talking to their local radio stations, calling in. Then when the internet came along, web stores were massive, and mailing lists and web stores were the place where you could do direct-to-fan initiatives. And then, obviously, social media then became a really good way for artists to communicate with their audience without the gatekeeper of radio or press. And the job started, in the last 10 years I've worked in the music industry, my job title has changed quite a lot. When I started 9 years ago, I was a social media coordinator at a record label. Then I became a manager, but then realized that what we did was a lot more than, managing social media channels. We also did fan competition and events, newsletters, websites, and so then I became a digital marketing manager. But then we realized that's also a bit vague. There's not a lot that is not digital these days. Even if you're talking about a physical album on a web store, that will come through in a digital experience. Marketing is also very wide. It encompasses so many facets. And so then a new term became popular, especially at major labels, and that's audience. And I quite like this title because we're defined by our purpose, the object of our work, rather than the tools that we use. So I find that really inspiring. And what the job is at the moment is very data-driven. When I first started, you could be like, oh, it's going well. We had 1,000 likes. Now there's so many data points to gather and help you to inform your strategy. Content is a massive part of it, of what I do. Community building is, and we'll go through this in detail, but just to give you a few touch points on what my job role is at the moment. Oh, in fact, if it's going to go dark every single time my laptop locks, that's going to be annoying. Let's see. And so really, even though now we've got the term of audience, working with an audience is a very, very broad term as well. And, an audience is anyone giving attention to an artist, or a prospective audience. It's people that we are hoping to convert into fans. This is just a broad overview of just the variety of ways in which people engage with music. Nothing new here, but it's just to show you the breadth that you're dealing with when you do my job. And one useful framework that I've been using to think about this has been something called Cohen. And it was introduced to me by a guy called Matt Hart, who runs a company called Better Ideas Faster, and he came into Warner to present this tool. It looks a lot like a marketing funnel, but it's not the same. And it's basically a way to map out audiences and map out the way people engage with music. It could be engaged with anything, but in our case, we're talking about music. And so on the left side, you've got fanatics, which are people who are highly engaged, deeply rooted in their scene, who are devoted to the artists that they're focused on, and they have a high purchase intent, you'd say, or high intention. And then you go through to enthusiasts, and those are the people who are super excited about music. They are often the ones who are discovering, they pride themselves on discovering an artist first and sharing it with their friends. So they're a really important part of audience building, because they're the people who are going to tell other people about the artist. And then you've got casuals, and casuals are the people who love, there's people who love music, but they can never remember the name of a song. These people are casuals. They love music, but for them it's a social experience. They go to gigs because, they like to go with their friends and they enjoy their experience, but it's in a slightly more casual way. And then at the very end of the spectrum, you've got indifference, and that's your mainstream. Those people won't pay attention until everybody else is paying attention, but they do have also a lot of value just by the sheer volume of this audience. So each audience section, if you will, has a value, really, in the ecosystem of an artist. But, a few studies, at the moment, the focus is really on superfans, and a few studies have made the news recently about this and about the opportunity they represent potentially monetarily. So this Goldman Sachs studies, for example, found that potentially superfans could represent nearly 2 billion of incremental revenue by 2027, and that about 20% of subscribers, so I'm guessing streaming subscribers, are superfans, and they're willing to pay more money. Same, Illuminate study, this was in the US, by the way, said that superfans spend 80% more on music each month. So, in the context of an industry who's always trying to diversify their revenue streams and make more money, this is why it's a massive buzzword at the moment. And I'm really seeing this in my artist projects, really. I'm working with an artist, a drum and bass artist called Izzy Cross, who's quite new. And 20% of her streams only come from only 2% of listeners. So I'm really seeing this day to day at the moment. So a good question to ask ourselves is, what do superfans want? Like, what are we, quote unquote, selling to them? A big part of it will be a perception of exclusivity. They want first access to things, or they want an interaction with an artist that they wouldn't normally get, or that someone else who's not as special as them will get. They'll want to feel a community spirit. They want to see that other fans, they're part of a community of other fans who also love that artist and feel connected to those. And then they want supporter satisfactions. They want to be seen being a supporter of their artist, and they want to be validated and appreciated. And then the last one is they want to feel special. They want to feel like they're getting something that someone else is not getting, and they want to be like an insider. And also, part of it is bragging rights. They want to have the right to brag and say, look, I was there first, or I'm part of this group you're not part of. And I also have to give credit to a brilliant talk by a guy called Chris Cook at Complete Music Update, who really helped me conceptualize all of these ideas, and he's brilliant. CMU is a really good wealth of information if you're looking for that. And what superfans don't want is to be taken advantage of, to feel like they're, cows were milking for their money. For example, like millions of physical formats at a high price point that they can't afford. And what they don't want is to feel forgotten about or not seen by the artist. So one risk with that is everyone's getting so excited about superfans and like creating Discords and Instagram broadcast channels. But really, one of the worst things you could do is open up a new communications channel and then not sustain it, because let's be honest, it's a lot of work to do that, both for the artists and their teams. And the worst thing would be for a fan to start engaging with that and then just the artist to stop engaging. And then they feel like, well, they lose interest, or worse, they'll just feel like it was a waste of their time to be engaged in the first place. And so growing and nurturing a community of superfans, it's going to do it again, so I need to spend very few on each slide. There's so many ways to grow a community of superfans, really. And what I would suggest starting with is getting to know your fans, because as I said, every artist is different. And so there are so many ways to kind of dig into the data of an audience. First one being obviously social media platforms. They've got really good insights. Then the comments, I would actually say there's no mystery in that. I spend quite a lot of time looking at the comments on some of my artists, then like stalking all these people, seeing what their profiles are like, what do they post about, what they're interested in. Yeah, so some just good old detective work sometimes is better than any crazy data tool that you've got. Then obviously DSP dashboards, I'm sure you're, Spotify for Artists, all of that. Spotify for Artists are really developing their kind of audience insights section. YouTube Studio is good for a specific, obviously, portion of that, but I spend a lot of time like looking at traffic sources. Are people searching for that song while they're coming through a playlist? Also, you can see what other channels that they follow, what other content they consume. Then, if you're working with a label or a distributor, they'll have some tools. Like at Warner, we've got something called Opus. When I was at Sony, we had something called Apollo. These, tools can range in usefulness, but they're always a wealth of information on there. And you've got a lot of third-party tools on that. I won't name all of them, and there's lots of articles about it. But one that I use quite a lot is Chartmetric, and they give you a whole load of data, not just audience, but they give you demographic data. And actually, going back to the social media platforms, Facebook has now a really good meta business suite, and you can now, for example, I'm working with several artists, and before I had to go, ask them for screenshots of their insights, or ask them for logins. Whereas now, if you connect an artist's Instagram page through the Meta Business Suite, you can see the reach data and a whole load of very, very useful information. And then, last but certainly not least, in real life, I would say there's nothing better than going to a gig, especially a developing artist, and getting a feel for what their audience is like, what are they wearing, what are they talking about. Like, I love just to kind of become a bit of a mole in fan groups and just being at the merch table and asking them about what they like and why, how long they've been into that artist. There we go. Once you have a base understanding of where your fans are and what they like, Then you can look at where you're going to meet them, where you're going to engage with them. And again, there's a massive breadth of places you can do that, so many touch points. Again, nothing new here, but just to give you an overview of the various ways where you can be interacting with fans. So I'll just show you a little example of something that I've done for one of my projects, the Izzy Cross artist I was just telling you about. So once we, did a good bit of research on her audience, we then mapped out the different sections and then decided how we're going to engage with each of them, because they're not all the same. And I'll go through a bunch of these tools later on, but it's just to show you and a lot of this is we're taking a risk and we have no idea, but we're just trying things out. And the first place where I wanted to start is first-party data, which is another buzzword of the music industry right now. And the first-party data is a big word, but it just means data that you collect about audience, so an email address or a phone number, but also their engagement data, how they're engaging with the mailers that you're sending, or how are they engaging with the web store, how many records have they bought, and stuff like that. And that's another big focus at the moment in the music industry. And the value of focusing on that lies in three main points. First of all, you will own these communication channels. Whether it's the artist, the management, or the label, you will be able to decide you want to send a fan a message and it will land into their inbox or into their WhatsApp, rather than relying on an algorithm to potentially, hopefully, serve your post to that audience. And then after a bit of time, you can get a pretty good understanding of what people want, what they're engaging with, where are they clicking. You can test, you can do A/B testing on newsletters, for examples. And then you ideally will get a good enough view of what they like so that you can serve exactly what they want. So you realize that that person only opens a mailer when it's about a live show. And so you can only send them information about live shows. And ideally, it'd be a really streamlined experience for a fan who doesn't get spam and gets exactly what they want. And then really with this, it's very much about slow acquisition rather than a quick win. Like a viral TikTok will get you lots of views, but an email address, if you treat it right, will be with you for a long time. These are just a few examples of good mailers that I've seen in different ways. Mailers can be very informational and short, but I also really love when they are in depth and you can see that the artist is really behind them. Lord sent a really long. This is like a 10th. There was 10th thumb scrolls of text and photos, and it was just amazing. She was talking about depression and breakup, and it was just really personal. You could tell this was not a marketing thing. It was the artist talking to her fans. Then CMAT is an Irish artist, assigned to independent, who started sending a newsletter where she was going to be really sincere, not necessarily about her music. And then Lucy Blue is an artist I worked with when I was at Sony, and she sends scans of her handwritten notes. Then I thought I'd run you through a case study that I put together for one of the campaigns that I spearheaded when I was at Warner Records with Dua Lipa. And so this was to celebrate, the occasion was to celebrate the 30th anniversary of Future Nostalgia, which was her second album. And we thought a lot about how we wanted to eventize this. I don't know how you pronounce that right, but in the first 4 years of working with Dua Lipa, from 2017 to 2021, we did a lot when we wanted to do an anniversary or a Valentine's Day thing. We did a lot of mini sites, micro sites, but these require an extremely large amount of work and money. And we're finding that people just don't want to leave. It's really hard to get people off a social media platform or a mailer into somewhere else. So we decided to do an integrated campaign that had at its core an objective of growing her mailing list. Obviously, we wanted to create conversation about the album, to reward fans with something cool, and then overall, working for a record label, you want to boost music consumption. So for this, I came up with the idea. I'm very proud of this because that was one of very few, after 4 years of working with her management and the rest of the team at Warner just trusted me. And it was the last thing before I left to go to Columbia. So I put a lot of effort in that. That was my Photoshop skills. So I came up with the idea of doing a treasure hunt. The only thing a fan needed to do is to sign up to the mailing list to hear about more. And then every day they needed to fill in a URL to unlock a giveaway. So each day they could win some merch, tickets to a show, or the last day was a Zoom with Dua Lipa. And so every day they had to go find that clue, find that one word, and that word was hidden. One day it was in the YouTube description. Another day you had letters hidden in the Spotify canvas of an image. That one was really hard. And it just worked really well. It meant that the mailing list grew by 50% in just that 1 week, which meant 68,000 signups in a week. It's bigger than anything I've worked on before or since, to be honest. And also, because it was integrated with YouTube, so people had to read through the YouTube description of Levitating to find that clue. They were streaming the song in the meantime. Same with Spotify canvases, so we did incur a spike in streaming as well. And just the sentiment was really good. That's one of my favorite things about this job, is to find out when fans are enjoying something that you made. And just every day, all over Twitter, everyone was like, oh, I'm waiting for my daily email. And just creating loads of memes with it, which was lovely. And then, if you wanted to take a few takeaways from this, I would say I'm most happy about the fact that I didn't make a microsite where I would have had to handle developers, and it was just using the platforms that we had and being creative with that. And then the call to action was extremely simple. It was literally just sign up to the mailing list, dualipa.com/sign up, and that's it. So now we've talked a little about first-party data. I wanted to show you a few tools that are kind of bubbling up at the moment that help you do that in a kind of more integrated way. So I use Salesforce, for example, at Warner, but we also use Community, which allows you to collect phone numbers as well as email addresses. You can send the email addresses to your mailing list, and then the phone numbers, you can create a WhatsApp channel. And text fans that way. Planet is a good one as well, which lives in the wallet of your phone. But there's a lot happening right now in that space, which is exciting. Then I thought we'd go through a few of these tools, a few places where artists can focus on talking to their superfans. It will by no means be, hopefully it will be familiar to you, but I thought it'd be a really good way to have an overview of all of these, and hopefully these will be some good inspiration. So Instagram broadcast channels is something that I'm really excited has launched because it allows an artist to communicate with a small amount of fans. What is going on? Don't think I'm doing anything. With a small amount of fans, so it's a one-to-many format. Fans can't reply, they can only comment. No, they can only react with an emoji. And then there's a really good way of, first of all of my artists, I share anything that's going public, like a music video, even demos sometimes, if it's a smaller artist where there's no copyright issues. I always will share that, or get the artist to share that in the broadcast channels with their super fans. And, Instagram is a really lovely place because lots of artists are very scared of TikTok. They're comfortable with Instagram, and there's so many features that allow you to supercharge your relationship with fans. The first tips are absolutely obvious, but replying to DMs has a really big impact. It makes that fan feel so special. It's really time consuming. A lot of time, to be honest, in my work, the challenge is not in finding ways to communicate with fans, it's just getting the artist on board and in a routine of doing this, because it's so much work. Artists want to be artists because they want to communicate through their music. A lot of them don't want to do social media. And it's about kind of encouraging them and coaching them through that process to know how important it is in the long run to creating, to really building a career. And so it's about finding a routine. I'm having artists being like, okay, we're going to, 20 minutes a day, and I work with management to help to make that happen. DM groups I've used a lot as well. This is one on the left that we created for Izzy Cross, and the really lovely thing that happened in there is that someone was saying that they've created a Discord channel, because we thought it was a bit early for Discord, so that's really lovely. And then another one, I'm a massive fan of Charlie XCX, and I also happen to work for a label. And so I went to one of her events and then met a load of other fans, and some guy created one of this chat, and then it's just really nice, and people share links or how many spots there are left at a party. Close friends as well is a good opportunity, potentially to kind of gatekeep some of that content. Story stickers, they've just rolled out a bunch of new ones. And then some artists, for example, Charlie XCX has a Finsta, has a different private Instagram page with kind of more BTS stuff. Next one is WhatsApp channels, and I'm really enjoying seeing that, and it's still, as a fan, a really exciting thing to get texts from an artist that you love. Anyone with a WhatsApp channel can create, anyone with a WhatsApp account can create a WhatsApp channel, but they're also, like Community, the platform that I was telling you about earlier, helps you do that and helps, adds other layers. For example, with Community, you can reply, like each user can reply, and the artist can see that in a dashboard. You can also segment by location. So one of the ways that Fred again did that was so cool. So when he went on tour in Australia, but his label, Atlantic, his team, cross-referenced the WhatsApp list of the people in Australia and their date of birth, because he also asked for the date of birth, and whoever was their birthday on the day of his Sydney show, he texted them and added them to the guest list. So that's just a really nice kind of surprise and delight, which is a marketing term that I love. And then Discord is also a very cool platform that allows fans to communicate with each other and really create a community that goes beyond the music. And I've seen some really good examples of that. For example, Maisie Peters, an artist signed to Atlantic, kind of stumbled upon a Discord that had been created by a fan that was already on 2,000 users. And then she joined it, and a few years later, it's now on 20,000 users. And she engages with them. As you can see, she organized a Zoom hangout or maybe a listening party. But she doesn't have to be in there all the time. The great thing about Discord is once you get to a certain level, they require less participation from an artist than other platforms. And then, hang on, let me just knock that quickly. Another thing that I wanted the screen was too small, but there's a metal band that I've been reading about called Avenged Sevenfold, who are also very good at Discord and other bits that we'll talk about later. So, beyond all of these was just hopefully just thought starters of the various platforms, by no means comprehensive. And so we've talked about the past, we've talked about the present, and now I thought we could look at the future and look at new opportunities that are coming in for artists in the world of fandom. Now we can get onto this. This is the dollar bills that we were talking about at the beginning that everyone's getting really excited about. It's a very, very new world, really, in this field. But these are a few examples of how an artist could diversify their income stream and what this could look like. First one would be digital gifting. That's something I'll show you a few examples of how you can do that on social platforms. Mostly that's come from the creator space, so people who make money from their content, make a living from their content, not their music. But a fan, imagine, can show appreciation for an artist by giving them a digital gift, which then can be translated into money. Another way of doing that could be a pay-to-access community or maybe a different tier. So Spotify, potentially, I've talked about launching a superfan platform. We're yet to see what that looks like, but that could be very exciting, especially because Spotify is somewhere a lot of people have already a subscription on there, so there could potentially be a different tier of that, a premium tier, where you can have perks and potentially access to the artist. Then paywalled content, for example, so that's content that you have to access after, how do you call it? Giving some money, basically. Parting ways with some cash was the expression I was looking for. I know a creator, not in the music sphere, but a creator only allows people into her close friends if they have subscribed to her on Patreon. That's one way of doing that. And then last one is digital collectibles. This is it could, can have a whole other talk on that. But NFTs can be a really good way for artists to make some extra money, especially if you've got a fan base that is tech savvy and loves that kind of stuff. So in terms of digital gifting, the social media platforms that we all know have already started doing stuff in that space. It's really, again, from the creator world rather than from the music world. But that means there's a lot of opportunities for artists to tap into this. And I'm yet to see an example of a kind of game-changing scalable way of an artist to leverage these. These are a few. So, for example, TikTok have just launched a subscription feature. This is a screenshot from a Disney princess. I didn't know, like a TikTok Disney princess who sings songs. Didn't know about that, but people can like subscribe to it and they get extra content perhaps, or chats that are only for subscribers. TikTok has also launched gifts, so very similar to what YouTube super chats and super stickers are. You can show your appreciation of an artist when they're going live by sending them a gift, which then they can redeem for money. Twitch and YouTube are some of the oldest platforms who launched these years ago. And on Twitch, you can show your support with bits. Super stickers is one. It will be an emoji that will be more likely to be seen by the creator, and a chat as well would be in the form of a comment. And Instagram are just launching this as well. They're experimenting with the US, although I logged in one of my artist accounts, an artist called Hannah Gray. I was looking through her Instagram insights the other day, and I could see that gifts was actually enabled. So I think it's launched in beta, and it's just rolling out to different accounts at different times. But I'm excited to see what that looks like and how artists are going to be using that. And then overall, there is just so many apps and startups that are bubbling up at the moment. I'm sure, if you read the industry press, you'll have heard from a few of them. So Warner Music Group, for example, is building a superfan app. We're yet to know what that will be like. Also, I was looking at Weverse, which is an app that was created by Hybe, who used to be called Big Hit, who are BTS's kind of management company and label. So that's interesting. There's also monetization opportunity within that. You can pay by Jelly, it's called. So it's massive in the K-pop scene. There are voice channels, there are lives. Oh yeah, I joined an audio live. It was in Japanese, so I couldn't understand everything, but that's something that I've never seen anywhere else, isn't a live that was only audio. So I think it could be really interesting. In the UK, what I've heard of is also Vault, which is more in terms of a kind of music subscription service rather than a fandom, although both are very linked, obviously. But James Blake launched a vault of his own where he could share new music with his fans for $5 a month. They'd have access to all of these new demos. Obviously, all of this raises questions about, how does this work in a context of a label deal? And that's also one of the reasons why all of these monetization tools that I just showed you, we're yet to see how it can work for artists because, who does the money go to? Really, how does it work? It's not in record label deals at the moment. So there probably needs to be new legislation, even to figure out what rights are being exploited. Are we exploiting the music rights? If we're also exploiting the publishing rights, we'll just have to have whole new agreements in place to cover those situations. And another one that the few ones that I quite like as well is Medallion, Fave, Weird. I mean, there's just so many of them. So a quick glance at Music Week or another platform that I really love is Music Ally. Don't know if you know them, but they're a kind of digital marketing platform. But a few questions come to mind in terms of how, what might decide the fate of those platforms and what the future could look like. First of all, is will people go to a new platform? I know I'm so sick of platforms and subscriptions, and I'm not ready to welcome a new app into my life. I don't know about you. But that's why I'm really curious to see what the platforms that we already use, what kind of products are going to launch, and especially Spotify announcing that they're building a superfan club. No idea what that could look like, but that could be huge because you're already on there, you're already subscribing. So that seems like it's the least friction in terms of a behavior change. And then you also have to think there's a whole load of these tools work with NFTs and blockchain. So Avenged Sevenfold, that metal band I was telling you about, did the whole campaign. Well, have launched a pass that that a fan can sign up to, and you can redeem rewards by showing how engaged you are with the artist. So, for example, if you go to a show, several shows, if you buy merch, if you buy records, like physical, like vinyl, for example, you kind of redeem points, where you stack up points, which you can then redeem on special experiences, for example, meets and greets, or kind of discounts on the merch store. And all of this, they've done NFTs, they've done collectible tokens, digital collectibles, and they've also used, so the way they're doing all of that is using NFC, so near field communication. It's what we use to, do Apple Pay and contactless pay on the phone. And so basically I don't actually know what it looks like, I'd have to look at it in more detail, but these fans get some kind of physical kind of QR code that they can scan whenever they go to a gig and they buy an album, and it just racks up on their account. Another way, an artist actually at Atlantic has done that. They're a band called Say Now, a girl band, very like 90s kind of Spice Girls revival. And so the Atlantic creative team made a cap, literally a cap for fans to win. And the cap had a kind of token in the cotton, sewn in. That meant that it just allows for so many opportunities. So for example, when people go to a gig, there'll be a little reader where people can just kind of check in and redeem some points. Yes, so that's where we are in 2024. It moves so quickly that I'd be really excited to see where we're at in 2015. Potentially Primavera Pro 2025, or 2015. Thank you so much for listening. I hope that was a useful overview of the world of audience building and fandom, and that you got some helpful insights to apply onto your projects. Thank you. I believe we have time for a few questions. Is that right? Do we have yes? Do we have a microphone, or is it just a case of shouting it out? I'm guessing shouting it out. Does anyone have a question on everything? I know we've covered a lot today. Yes, you were first. Go ahead.
Can you imagine potential...
Oh, no, there is a mic.
Perfect, thank you. Thank you for the talk. Can you expand maybe or imagine the potential future of these platforms, the monetization that you mentioned, that there are new kind of contracts or...
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a music lawyer, so my knowledge of this will be limited. It's also all to play for. So I've not seen an artist do this at scale yet.
Right.
So, for example, James Hype did a fan club through Chasm, but I've personally not seen it yet, so it's really all to play for. But I think in answer to your question, I think it's these 4 pillars that will really give us an idea of what artists can do with that.
Because I'm more coming from the angle, is it possible just to keep it to the artist? Is it necessary to get into this combination between the label and the artist?
Yeah, I mean, that will all be to do with the deal. So I know an artist signed to a major record label, you can't add a new clause about a new revenue stream without, thorough negotiation. But if you're an artist starting out, you can do anything you want. So I think it's a really good opportunity for artists starting out and for artists developing, because they have no one, unsigned artists have no one to ask permission for. So it could be really exciting.
Thank you.
But one thing I would say with that as well is you'd have to be really, I'd be curious to see, if you're going to do something really techy, is your audience tech savvy or more tech averse? Loads of people just want to buy vinyl records and have no idea what NFTs are. So I feel like a lot of people are getting excited about this, but they need to remember who their fans are as well, and if their fans are not necessarily into the techie side of it, it might just not pick up as much. I hope that was helpful.
Hello. So What I wanted to know was, at what point of an artist's career would you recommend for them to start doing this, like extra payment activities for fans? Because at the beginning, if you're like a new singer, it would be to ask more money from your fans.
Oh yeah. It basically another thing I wanted to say about those new opportunities and how are those platforms going to take off or not is the value exchange needs to be right. And again, we go back to the very start. Would it be worth your while as a fan? And do you have enough to offer to demand something back? And so yes, at the beginning I would focus on organic fandom. To be honest, right now I would really focus on for everyone on, unless you're a creator, I've seen a few artists who are influencers first and then artists second, and who kind of transition. There, maybe you're carrying over an audience that is maybe more used to that type of behavior. But currently, I'm not on any of my projects. We're really focusing on the real connection with a super fan first, and then later down the line. To be honest, I want to see what everyone else is doing, because I feel like asking for money from a fan is just a lot to ask, really. And so you have to be really mindful of what value you're exchanging. And so, for example, lots of people are talking about BTS, extra content, Zoom with an artist. All of these things are losing value over time because they're being, scarcity brings the value up. So when something is readily available everywhere, everyone's giving us extra BTS. That loses value. What people want really, usually, is early access to tickets or discount on merch or early music. It's those three pillars of music, live, music, live, and merch that people tend to really gravitate towards, and that can have some value. So I would really focus on growing a loyal fan base before doing anything around monetization, really. But that's just me. If an artist is really out there and wanted to do that from the first go, and had a really tech savvy audience and drops an NFT, potentially. But in terms of my projects and my experience as a music fan, that's what I would recommend.
Okay, thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Sumeya. Thank you so much for everything. I wanted to know, what would you recommend to focus on for an emergent artist, like really emergent artist, because they wouldn't have the support of someone like you, or access to that?
Yeah, for sure. What I would focus on is probably Instagram. And it depends on the artist as well. If the artist if an artist's audience is mainly using a certain social media platform, you should really focus on that. And so, for example, if Instagram is a big platform for an artist, I would focus on those things I talked about, like replying with starting with the basics, replying to comments, replying to DMs, keeping a sustained social media output, and then potentially doing, after a certain point, if you've done enough activity and enough live, you can ideally do a fan meet and greet. I really think that in-person interactions are just so much more valuable and will stay with a fan so much more than any mailer you could ever do. So it depends where you're at, but if there is opportunity to meet fans afterwards, after a show, for example, or even I've got loads of artists where the fans are too young to go to a show, for example, or they're spread all over the UK and they can't come to London. So I've run a few Zoom listening parties or just Zoom hangouts. Often what we do is we'd play the fans. I've done this a few times where you gather a few fans, join a Zoom, and then, where's the water? It's just that. And then you can play them the music before it's released. And it's always a really nice moment. But I would focus on Instagram and in real life activations as well as kind of virtual hangouts, potentially as a starting point. Does that help? Yeah. There's one here. Oh, thank you, Maria. I think there was a question over here, right? No? Oh, here.
You talked. Hi, I'm Layden. Nice to meet you. I wanted to ask since there's probably more apps coming up, you know, where artists can interact with their fans, do you think that in the future we will be seeing artists creating their own apps to be able to have a more direct contact with their fans?
I personally think that would be just too many apps to have, because if you had one app per artist, and you were a fan of more than one artist, you'd have to have several apps. So I personally wouldn't see that catching on unless it was like Taylor Swift or Ed Sheeran.
So you mean like super mainstream?
Yeah, exactly.
Big.
Well, to have enough of an audience,
Right.
broad enough audience to have enough users and make it worth your while, because an app is a lot of time and money to build. So one way I could see that is, I mean, I'm seeing that with Medallion actually. So on Medallion you can build your own store, you can build your own page. And so each artist page looks very different. It's a kind of blank canvas for an artist to use. So that's a solution for this, where the app won't look the same for each artist. An artist can offer a different thing. The graphic design can be really beautiful and in line with the artist's branding. So I think it's more about like one tool that then gets adapted. And I think that's one of the USPs of that app Medallion, is it does offer that, which a lot of the other apps I've seen don't seem to have that. For example, Vault looks the same. You can download and subscribe to someone's Vault, and James Blake's Vault will look the same as everyone else's. Yeah. Any more questions? Yes, one at the back.
My question is again about the emerging artists, especially focusing on like the recommendation you just told us about. If you're an emerging artist, it's better to start like posting on social media and focusing on like building that fan base. But for example, if you start to post on multiple social media apps, how do you divide the content, or how do you plan like the posting schedule and everything?
Yeah. I mean, TikTok and Instagram are the main two platforms I'm working with. I know a lot of artists use also Facebook or X/Twitter. The content is very different. Our content strategies are very different when it comes to Instagram and TikTok, for example. Are these the two platforms that you use mostly as well? Would absolutely post content on TikTok that doesn't get to Instagram, although Reels is becoming more prevalent. And that's something I didn't even... But I guess super fan building, Reels wouldn't necessarily come into it. A Reel getting good reach to your non-followers is a way to get people in. But the road is long until you make them super fans. So yeah, on TikTok I would do content that's way more... People's attention spans are like 0.6 seconds. So the focus will be way more on grabbing their attention from the beginning. Whereas Instagram tends to be more aesthetic. It tends to be, beautiful content, aesthetic pleasing stuff. Whereas TikTok, you can be a little bit more, not low res as such, but just a little bit more off the cuff. Although I would say on TikTok, how bright a piece of content is, how bright a video is, literally, has an impact on the algorithm and how much it's going to serve it. So a video that's shot pretty much in the dark or without proper lighting will get pushed down the algorithm on TikTok. So that's something I've seen. That's why ring lights are so big. There is some content that can live on both Reels and TikTok. The one thing is just this so completely different experience of being on these apps. On Instagram, people go to an Instagram page to check out an artist. Like, that's my first point of call before Spotify when I want to look up an artist. And so the content is way more chronological. Whereas TikTok, you're starting fresh with every post. People don't really, that's not how they use TikTok. People don't really go to a profile and check it all out. So that means you can also do several iterations of the same video, the same concept, without really damaging your kind of reputation. And TikTok is way more forgiving in terms of like archiving and retrying and reposting. Whereas on Instagram, I feel like if you've archived a post or deleted one, you need to wait a little bit of time. Obviously, this is all very, like, I have meetings with TikTok and Instagram on a weekly basis, and that's something they're very unwilling to share information about. So everything that I've just said has not been confirmed by either party. The algorithm is the most mysterious part of a social platform, and they won't tell us anything about it. So yeah, I would say wildly different. And on TikTok, you can just be a little bit more free as well. I always tease music, or try to at least, if the music is available, for 4 weeks plus, because also at TikTok it takes a lot of time. People are so, like, their attention is so maxed out that they'll need to see something 5 times. I mean, that's a rule of thumb in marketing. I remember seeing a stat where, and that was maybe from the advertising industry, where you needed like 7 to 11 impressions, so times of seeing about a product before you lean in, before you look it up or potentially buy it. So that's kind of what I try and keep in mind when I do my artist strategies, and that's something that artists are very reluctant to doing, because they feel like when you've done a post about one thing once, they just don't want to do it again, because then it will look try hard. But the reality is, if your post got 5,000 views, amazing, but 5,000 people, well, first of all, 5,000 views isn't 5,000 unique reach. So you need to look at the reach, and it's just, especially on TikTok, 5,000 people who have watched one TikTok video on your profile, the next video that gets another 5,000 views might just be a completely different set of people. And so yeah, I would just keep these things in mind. I'm trying to think if there's a few. Yeah, and then on Instagram, and I think what I would do is, platforms reward you when you use them. So I would really say, and I tell this to all my artists, there's definitely power in visibility. And so in using the platform, like any other social media user, liking, commenting especially. I mean, I don't know how you guys discover new accounts on Instagram, apart from like meeting someone or hearing about an artist or something. But for me, it's always by seeing a comment from someone on an artist, on a post I'm following. So that's kind of cross-pollination of audiences is really important. So if your artist is out there commenting and sharing and being an active member of the community, they're more likely to have people coming in. And overall, a platform will reward you if you start using their features. So I would always say to artists, jump on the features early. Like at the moment, there's a new Instagram story sticker that's just launched, which is DM to reveal. And so you get a photo that's like blurred on your Instagram story, and you have to literally DM the artist to reveal that photo. And so that's always something cool, and it will give you a point of difference as well if you're the first one from that kind of community. Like I remember, I saw an artist, someone I went to university with, who used that on her Instagram, who's an artist, musical artist, and I was just like, this is so amazing. And it was just really, you had that sense of surprise. I had it for her. Like the next person who did that, I was like, cool, still quite cool. And the third time you've seen it, you're like, all right, cool. That's just another social media feature. Helpful? But yeah, one thing I wanted to say as well, and I didn't cover it, but like superfans have music, usually they're superfans because they have music at the core of their identity. And they want to feel part of a community, and they want to feel they're like very loyal to an artist. So if you can manage to win their trust, and it's a kind of long-term process. A lot of people it depends on the managers you work with, but there's some managers who want results quick. And so it depends on the objectives, but as much as possible, and on Izzy Cross, the artist I was telling you about, I'm very lucky in that the manager is in there for the long run. Like he knows it can take 10 years to build a career. And so we're allowed to experiment and go step by step rather than like burning through a few steps and then going back to zero. Any other questions? No? All right. Well, thank you so much for joining today, and I hope you have a great festival.